The Irish kings, Adam to Brian Boru. Just before we start, it's helpful to clarify that the people we now call Irish are Gaels. When they came to Ireland originally, they were called Scots, after a woman called Scota. When some of them moved to North Britain or Albion, they continued to be called Scots, and the land became known as Scotland. Those who remained in Ireland are known as the Irish. The history of the Irish kings is not quite so straightforward as the history of the Welsh and English kings. There are several sources for ancient Irish history. For example, the Annals of Clonmacnoise are an early 17th century, early modern English translation of a lost Irish chronicle, which covered events in Ireland from prehistory to 1408. The work is sometimes known as Mageoghagan's book, after its translator Conall the Historian. The History of Ireland by Geoffrey Keating. The Irish title for this is Foras Feasa Éirinn, literally Foundation of Knowledge on Ireland, but most often known in English as the History of Ireland. It is a narrative history of Ireland by Geoffrey Keating, written in Irish and completed about 1634. These sources rely on ancient source material that is now lost. However, we can still get some idea of the rise of the Irish kings. A useful starting point is Libor Gabala Éirinn, literally the Book of the Taking of Ireland, known in English as the Book of Invasions. It tells the story of Ireland being settled 6 times by 6 groups of people. Ireland, like Britain, was originally inhabited by giants who needed to be fought, and they seem to have been there from the time of the flood. The Libor Gabala Éirinn gives the usual list of patriarchs from Adam to Noah. All European nations are descended from Noah's son Japheth, and it explains that the Gaels, or the Irish, and Scythians were descended from Japheth's son Magog. Foras Feasa, or Feninsa Farsaid. By the way, all these names have different pronunciations because there's Gaelic pronunciation, Latinized, Anglicized pronunciations. So every name has several different versions. Anyway, getting back to the point, Foras Feasa is said to be the forebear of the Gaels. He lives at the time of the Tower of Babel. His son Nel, or Niall, marries Scota, the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh. They have a son named Goidel Glass, also known as Gadhael, Gadelas, Gaethelos. Goidel crafts the Goidelic or Gaelic language from the original 72 languages that arose after the confusion of tongues at Babel. Goidel's offspring, the Goidels or Gaels, leave Egypt at the same time that the Israelites leave Egypt during the Exodus and settle in Scythia. They eventually leave Scythia and after hundreds of years find their way to Spain. Scythia is kind of roughly southern Russia, Ukraine area. The next chart gives details of the 6 invasions. Firstly, the Césaires. They were the first people to arrive in Ireland. They're led by Césaire, daughter of Bith, son of Noah. They are told to go to the western edge of the world to escape the oncoming flood. They settle in Ireland but are destroyed in the flood, so obviously there's nothing biblical about these legends. We're not aware that Noah had a daughter before the flood. The next name is Partholon. After the Césaires, Ireland is uninhabited for 300 years until a second group of people arrive. They are led by Partholon, who is descended from Noah through Magog. They defeat the giants, Fomorians in the land, but eventually die of a plague. After then, the Nemed. Ireland is then uninhabited for 30 years until a third group of people arrive. They are led by Nemed, who is also descended from Noah through Magog. They are defeated by the giants. Then the Firbolg. Those who went to Greece were enslaved by the Greeks and made to carry bags of soil and clay. After 230 years, they sail back to Ireland. They are known as the Firbolg, men of bags. Then we have the Tuatha de Danann, which seems to be some kind of mythological, supernatural race of people who went by the name of Tuatha de Danann. They invade Ireland and defeat the Firbolg and also the giants. And then finally we have the Milesians. The Gaels, who we've already mentioned, have settled in Spain, and they now send a force to take Ireland. They are referred to as the sons of Mil Espan. The name Mil Espan comes from the Latin Mils Hispania, soldier of Hispania. After some battles with the Tuatha de Danann, they agreed to share the island with them. The Milesians took the world above, and the Tuatha de Danann took the world below, the underworld. And this could be where we get all the legends of the Irish leprechauns and supernatural. The Milesians were the last of the invaders, settlers, and so it is only their genealogies that have been preserved. Their family tree begins with the brothers Eber and Éirinn. They trace their descent from Goidel Glass, the father of the Gaels. The Irish scholar nun Mary Frances Cusack, who wrote the illustrated History of Ireland in the 19th century, tells us that the great southern chieftains such as the McCarthys and O'Briens claim descent from Eber. The northern families of O'Connor, O'Donnell and O'Neill claim descent from Éirinn. There are various alternative versions of these Irish legends. It would take a lifetime to go through them all. One interesting version is the Chronica Gentis Scotorum, or Chronicles of the Scottish People. It was written by John of Fordun, a priest who lived in Aberdeen in the 14th century. In his chronicle, the Scots derived their origin from Gaethelus, son of Neolus, king of Greece, who in the time of Moses went to Egypt, where he married Scota, a daughter of the pharaoh, after which he led the Scots to Spain. So this agrees with what we've seen already. From Spain, several groups travelled to Ireland. The last of these was under the leadership of someone called Simon Breac. There's various different spellings of his name. He's also called Simon Breac. And he was the son of the King of Spain. He brought with him the coronation seat of the Scottish kings, which according to Fordun was made of marble. There are various different versions of this story in different chronicles. However, Simon Breac, or Breck, seems to be a central character. He was crowned King of Ireland in about 700 BC and placed the marble chair in Tara, the traditional seat of the Irish kings, where many successive kings were crowned after him. According to Holinshead's Chronicle, one of the successors of Simon Breac was called Rothsay. In his time, the people had multiplied, and he transported some of them to the Ebonides, the islands which we know as the Hebrides. This was how the Scots originally came to the land we know as Scotland. By about 600 BC, the Scots had settled in a place called Argathelia. after Goidel Glass, also known as Gaethelos, which we know as Argyll. It was around this time that another group of Scythian people arrived in Ireland who were known as the Picts. They were not allowed to live among the Scots in Ireland, but were given wives from among the Scots and allowed to live in Albion, the area we know as Northern Britain or Scotland. From this time on, there was conflicts between the Scots and Picts in Scotland. At some point in the 4th century BC, there was a king in Ireland called Ferguhardus. He sent his son Fergusius, who was also known as Fergus, to help his fellow Scots in Albion who were at war with the Picts. Fergusius came to Albion with an army and the marble chair. He was crowned upon the chair, also known as the Chair of Hope in Argyll, as the first king of the Scots in about 327 BC. The Picts and the Scots divided up Scotland between them, but there followed centuries of conflict with the Britons and also between the Picts and the Scots themselves. The Pictish nation finally came to an end during the reign of Kenneth, King of the Scots, in the 9th century AD. The Picts as a nation were entirely wiped out by the Scots, with a few survivors having to flee abroad. In some chronicles, the marble chair brought to Argyll became known as the Stone of Destiny. Kenneth moved it to Scone, and it became known as the Stone of Scone. King Edward I of England moved it to Westminster Abbey in London in 1296. In 1996, it was returned to Scotland and placed in Edinburgh Castle. However, this stone is not the original marble chair, as it is a stone made of sandstone. In Ireland itself, it is difficult to establish an authentic line of kings, although many works have attempted to do so. According to medieval Irish literature, Ireland was ruled by a high king since ancient times. Many early Irish texts, like the Libor Gabala Éirinn, attempted to trace the line of the dynasties. Geoffrey Keating's Foras Feasa Éirinn, the history of Ireland, gives long genealogies of the various chieftains going back to Adam. The kings or chieftains of the clans were chosen from the most able or suitable members of the clans, rather than following a strict system of primogeniture, such as the English followed, that is, where the firstborn son inherits the title. However, one king stood out from the others and could probably be called the greatest High King of Ireland. In some ways, he is to Ireland what Arthur was to the Britons and Alfred to the English. Brian Boru was a fearless warrior who succeeded in uniting all the provinces of Ireland under his rule. Together with his army at the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, Brian Boru defeated a Viking Irish alliance army and ended the Viking era of control in Ireland. Unfortunately, although Brian Boru had won the greatest victory of his long career, he did not live long to enjoy it. As he knelt in his tent praying for victory and for his army, Viking Brodir, who was nearby, ran into his tent and killed the 73-year-old Brian. The High Kingship of Ireland continued until Rory O'Connor, Ruadri Ua Concobert, the last High King. During his reign, there was an Anglo-Norman invasion of Ireland. In October 1171, King Henry II of England landed with a large army to assert control over both the Anglo-Normans and the Irish. From that point on, the Anglo-Normans gradually conquered and acquired large swathes of land from the Irish, over which the kings of England then claimed sovereignty. I could end the story of the Irish kings here, but actually the story doesn't end here. There is a direct line of descent to our current British monarch, King Charles III, from Brian Boru. The following chart gives an idea of the descent from Adam through Mageoghagan to the Gaels and the Irish kings. It also gives a connection to King Charles III. So if we've seen Adam, starting with Adam, we go down through his generations to Noah, and then to Noah's son Japheth. He had a son called Mageoghagan. And the Gaels, or the Irish, are descended from Mageoghagan. We then come to the person we've mentioned called Conall Glass, who apparently lived at the time of, according to some legends, lived at the time of Tower of Babel. He was the father of the Gaels. Gaels left Egypt at the time of the Israelites, and they settled in Scythia. And then after hundreds of years, they found their way to Spain. So you've got this line of descent from Adam to Noah, Mageoghagan to Conall Glass. The Milesians who settled in Ireland are the descendants of the Gaels. Then we have these two Carrick brothers, Éirinn and Éirinn, who are the descendants of the Milesians, so they come down from the Mageoghagan line. And the great chieftains of Ireland are descended from them. Brian Boru, whose father was a Kennedy, started the system of surnames in Ireland and the O'Brien clan, but he came from a people called the Dalcassians, who were descended from Éirinn. So we've got a direct line really from Adam down to Brian Boru. And then I found this direct line of descent from Brian Boru down to Queen Elizabeth, and obviously to King Charles III. All these people are real people that you can Google and find out about. I can, maybe if I ever get time, I'll fill this out with a bit more detail. But this is a clear line of descent from Brian Boru to King Charles III. So to sum up, the Irish or Scots are different from the Welsh and the English. The Welsh and the English are descended from Japheth's son Javan. The Irish and the Scots are descended from another of Japheth's sons, Mageoghagan. This may account for why the Irish and Highland Scots have a different spiritual history to the English and Welsh. They did not take part in religious changes brought about by the Reformation, although the Lowland Scots did, but remained in the Catholic fold. However, the Irish kings are still a part of the British royal line through the connection with Brian Boru. Prophetically speaking, England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland are all Tarshish nations. They are the nations which parented the Tarshish Cub nations, which are the nations which were once part of the British Empire. Consequently, the future of Ireland is not with the European Union. At some point, there will be a rupture between the Republic of Ireland and the EU, as Ireland realigns itself with the other Tarshish nations. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, you can find more information at prophecy-workshop.com.